What's up everyone, Zach Seif here, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 albums that inspired me to become the best guitar player that I can. For those of you who are new here, welcome to the channel. My name is Zach Seif. I post weekly content about what it's like being a full-time musician in today's modern music industry. I make gig vlogs with my bands that I tour with. I make gear demos and gear reviews. And I also like to make videos like this where I talk about things that inspire me on a regular basis or have inspired me in the past to continue doing what it is I do on a regular basis. For today's video, we're going to take a look at 5 albums that really inspired me, influenced me, or really pushed me to become the best possible musician that I could be. And it really goes all the way back to when I first started playing guitar in 2008. The record that started it all for me was Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. Appetite for Destruction came out in 1987 off of Geffen Records, and it was the best-selling debut record of all time up to that point and up until 2000 when my next favorite record came out. What really set this record apart from everything else that was coming out at the time is it was a little darker and more aggressive than the other hair metal and hard rock music that was out at the time. It had songs that dealt with some heavier topics that were more than just about partying and having a good time or a broken heart and stuff like that. And the production just had a different feel. Guns N' Roses didn't do all of the makeup and stuff like that Poison and Motley Crue were doing, but instead they had a more edgier kind of look, and it really pushed the band off the back and success of their singles Welcome to the Jungle and Sweet Child of Mine, Paradise City, etc. Well, if that record came out 9 years before I was born, how did I discover it? Well, back in 2006, 2007, that's when Guitar Hero 3 came out, and I got a copy of that for, I believe it was Christmas. My brother and I got it as like a combined present, and I started playing that game and just instantly became immersed in it. I spent all my free time playing it. I thought it was super cool having like a physical controller and pressing the buttons, and I got introduced to so much music because of that game. And for those of you who are unaware, when you get to the level that has Welcome to the Jungle as a playable song, the boss battle is against Slash. What I thought was really cool is that at the time they got musicians such as Slash and Tom Morello to put on motion cap suits, and they filmed them actually playing songs and doing, you know, some stage moves and some stuff like that. And they also recorded original songs as these boss battle guitar duels. And seeing Slash with the top hat and the long hair and the slung Gibson Les Paul, I thought was the coolest thing ever. I wanted to play guitar so bad after seeing that. My dad had a copy of Appetite for Destruction, and he let me borrow it to listen to it. I put it on my iPod, and I must have listened to that record dozens and dozens of times. And then come March of 2008, we bought my first guitar. I split it with my mom. We got a Hohner acoustic guitar, and the rest is history from there. So I have Appetite for Destruction to thank for really making me want to do what it is I do now. Coming up next on my list is Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park. Released in October of 2000 off of Warner Brothers Records, this was the album that really shifted my musical tastes for the rest of my life. Before I heard of Linkin Park, I really just kind of listened to whatever was on the radio or whatever my parents or grandparents were listening to. And this was the first time that I felt that I found music that really spoke and connected with me on a deeper level. Probably discovered Linkin Park somewhere in the early 2000s, I'm gonna say, because back then they still played music on the radio similar to Linkin Park. And I remember hearing songs such as Numb and In the End and What I've Done. And I also remember them being featured in movies such as Transformers 2. And I just always thought it was such a cool sound and cool vibe. So when I finally got my own iPod, right now I sound dated because I just used the word iPod, which no one knows what they are anymore. Downloaded Meteora and Hybrid Theory, and something just clicked. Those records just kind of hit me at the time that I had discovered them, which was probably around 7th or 8th grade. So I always call Linkin Park my teen angst band, because whenever I was having a rough day or was feeling a little down, I'd put on a Linkin Park record and just kind of sit there and go like, yeah, yeah, this is exactly what I'm feeling. Yeah, no one understands me. No one knows what I'm going through. Blah, blah, blah. But the music sonically also just sounded so different from what I was used to. It was heavy, yet melodic and catchy, and there was nothing too technically crazy about the music, but it still just sounded so good. Like every single part, every track, every lyric, every note was exactly where it needed to be, and there was nothing extra. And that really stuck with me because I could learn entire Linkin Park albums on the guitar with relative ease within, a year or two of playing. It was also my first introduction to PRS guitars, which, as you all know, I've had a PRS guitar in my possession from 2012 up until today. So I've been playing those guitars for 11 years, and it's because of seeing Brad Delson with one. I actually got to see one of his personal platinum custom 24s when I went to visit the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a freshman in high school, so that was really cool. Coming in next on my list is Homesick by A Day to Remember. Released in 2009 off of Victory Records, this was the album that got me into heavier styles of music. Linkin Park paved the way to getting into heavier music with, heavier, aggressive down-tuned guitars and screaming, and then A Day to Remember just took it to a whole other level. This was the first time I really started listening to pop punk and emo and metalcore and post-hardcore style of music with heavy breakdowns and drops and guitars that would tune down to drop C, drop B, drop B flat, super low tunings, really cool riffs, tremolo picking, and really aggressive screamed vocals from lead vocalist Jeremy McKinnon. Homesick is hands down one of the greatest records of all time, especially in the pop punk, easycore, hardcore, post-hardcore, whatever genre you want to put them in. They really made their own sound. They took what other bands were doing at the time, such as, 4 Years Strong and whatnot, but then really refined it and brought it to a whole other level and just rose above every other band that was doing that kind of mix of clean singing, but also the heavy hardcore vocals and stuff like that at the time. And that still rings true today, where they're headlining all these really big tours and drawing millions of monthly listeners and millions of streams every time they release a new song. A Day to Remember are really the masters of what they do. What really caught my attention with their music is the fact that at that time it was probably the heaviest thing I've ever heard. I mean, when you put on Mr. Highway's Thinking About the End, it makes a lot of 80s metal sound like pop music. It just has this real aggressive tone to it with lyrics that are also really relatable. They're not about these real light topics, they're about things that are a little bit heavier, and the lyrics kind of make you think a bit more introspectively. And how all of that combined just creates something that really caught on to me and caught my attention when I was going from middle school into high school, and they were at kind of like their peak at that point. Like I said, Homesick had just come out when I heard about them. I saw commercials on TV for that. Like who sees commercials for, metalcore and pop punk records anymore? You don't really anymore. So I thought that was really cool. The commercial had the song Downfall of Us All on it, and I'm listening to it and I'm like, man, this is catchy. So my friend bought the record and he let me borrow it. I'm pretty sure I still have it. I don't think I quite gave it back, and that's because I just listened to it nonstop. That's another record that I would play on my guitar from top to bottom and just had a blast. It really had an emotional impact and connection with me, and it really kept me going to want to pursue new areas of guitar, such as low tunings and breakdowns and fast guitar riffs like that. Around the same time was when one of my friends in high school, Abe, picked me up one day from school, and we went to Vintage Vinyl, which was a record store that just recently closed down here in central New Jersey, and I saw Systematic Chaos by Dream Theater. Released in 2007 off of Roadrunner Records, this was the first full Dream Theater record that I owned. The only song that I had at the time was the single Dark Eternal Night from the same record, and the way that I found that song is probably the least metal way possible. I told the story before on the channel, but I'll share it again just because I think it's funny and it brings a smile to my face. It was 2007, the year that the record was released, and I hadn't been playing guitar yet at that point. My mom and I were in a Kohl's parking lot waiting for my aunt to do back to school shopping, and I was flicking through the channels waiting, and I came across Seton Hall Pirate Radio, which was a private Christian college that played metal music. I love that. I think that's so cool. And Dark Eternal Night came on, and I must have clicked right when it was at the chorus, because I remember hearing these big, huge sounds that kind of sounded like guitar, but also keyboards, but they also sounded like lower than a guitar. It was real heavy and big, and James was doing these really beautiful flowing melodies, and the drums were doing these crazy drum fills, and I was like, oh my god, what am I listening to? So I took down the name, because you could see it on the little display there when it used to kind of scroll through the name. And I came home and instantly downloaded that song, and I was like, Dream Theater, right, this is really cool. And that's all I really listened to in terms of Dream Theater up until I went to Vintage Vinyl and saw that same album cover in physical CD form. Like, I gotta buy that. So I buy it just based off of that one song, and we listened to it on the way home. Needless to say, my entire life changed at that moment. I had been playing guitar for about 3 years at that point, and hearing Systematic Chaos by Dream Theater made me totally rethink my entire approach to the instrument. It started as something that I thought was really fun, and something that I did practice every day, but I wasn't aiming to really achieve any specific goals. I just liked it because it was fun. I could play songs that I really liked, and I was starting to get better. Well, after this, I knew that I had to get as good as possible, because I couldn't play anything that was on this record. It was technically challenging, it was fast, it was melodic, it sounded so cool, so good, so heavy, and I had to figure out how to do it. So Systematic Chaos is what brought me from just a casual enjoying to play the guitar every day because it was fun to I'm playing guitar every day because I want to get better. And that's when I started to spend anywhere from 2 to 6 hours a day practicing, and that lasted up until my, I want to say, mid-junior year of high school, when I started to have to work and stuff like that. And it was just a really cool moment of time, about 2 years, 2.5 years, where I practiced every single day because I wanted to get as good as John Petrucci. Before we get to my final album on today's list, I just want everyone to take 2 seconds and hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, leave a comment to tell me what your favorite albums are that really inspire you as a musician. I love reading and responding to every single comment that I get on this channel. Builds a cool sense of community, and it helps me figure out what kind of music you all are into. I really appreciate that. So again, if you haven't, take 2 seconds, hit that button. It helps the channel out a ton. Now let's get on to today's #1 album. Coming in at #1 on today's list is Periphery 2 by Periphery. Released in 2012 off of Sumerian Records. I discovered Periphery probably mid-sophomore year of high school at this point, so about a year after I really started getting into Dream Theater. And Periphery 2 had just come out. I was on vacation at my grandparents' house in the Poconos, and I was scrolling through YouTube, just finding some new guitar stuff to play, and I came across the music video for, I want to say, CAFO by Animals as Leaders. I believe I found that video first, and I was just watching these 3 guys shred these 8-string guitars and doing crazy tapping stuff, and I was like, whoa, that is sick. But there's no way that I could pull that off. And one of the recommended videos said something featuring John Petrucci. So I'm like, oh, I know John. That's the guitar player from Dream Theater. I clicked that, and it was Erised, which is one of the tracks off of Periphery 2 where John does a guest guitar solo. So I clicked that track, and I listened to it, and my jaw just dropped. I didn't know what I was listening to. It sounded almost like a mix of Linkin Park and A Day to Remember and Dream Theater, and just something that sounded like all my favorite things combined into one. Needless to say, when it got to the John Petrucci solo, I lost my shit. I got goosebumps, and I was like, oh my god, this is the coolest solo ever. I still can't play it to this day, but every now and then I'll take out a guitar, tune it down to drop C, and see if I can learn that solo. It's hands down one of my favorite solos ever, and I highly recommend that you check it out. But that led me to go download Periphery 2 immediately, and I started listening to it from top to bottom, and it was sick. I knew that Dream Theater had used 7 strings before, but this was the first time that I heard them in such a unique, technical, complex usage with elements of electronic music and shred and this whole gent sort of sound that sounded like a heavier, tighter version of metalcore that I'd been into for a couple years. And it was just really cool hearing an album that flowed from top to bottom. While it's really not a concept record, it is a gapless album where the whole album flows without any stopping or fading out, and you can just listen to the album on repeat and it just kind of flows back into itself. And I thought that was one of the coolest things ever. Well, at the time I also was subscribed to Guitar World magazine, and I remember getting a copy in the mail that had the 3 guitar players of Periphery on the front cover: Misha Mansour, Jake Bowen, and Mark Holcomb. And I'm reading the article of how they created Periphery 2, and they were citing Final Fantasy and video game music. They were citing Dream Theater and these technical metal bands, and they were also talking about putting electronic elements into the record and how they were using these cool things called the Axe effects, which I had never heard of yet, to get all these really cool sounds. And that's what led me down this rabbit hole of rack mount gear, such as the Line 6 Pod at the time, because I couldn't afford Axe effects yet. I didn't even have a job. And getting these really cool, unique guitar tones with ambient delays and shimmers, and utilizing different tunings and 6, 7, and 8 string guitars, that I just wanted to learn how to do all of that. And that propelled me, on top of already knowing Dream Theater, to want to really expand my musical vocabulary, learn more techniques, learn more genres of music, and just get technically more proficient at the instrument. And to this day, these 5 records are still albums that I listen to on a regular basis. I'll pop them on once or twice a year, just listen to them top to bottom, and it always reinvigorates and motivates me, re-inspires me. I don't even know if those are words, but it makes me want to get better at the instrument, just like they did when I first discovered those records. Let me know in the comments what some of your favorite albums of all time are. Until next time, everyone, keep on practicing and keep on following your dreams.